head like this so completely. So let's jump in to the match here and let's see how it goes. Both of these players with not a great start to their tournament, only one win between the two, and that belongs to Thoralf Severin. Luis Scott-Vargas can't be happy with the way his day started, but perhaps a fresh start for both of them with their historic decks is exactly what they need. Let's see how this plays out. Castle Ardenvale hitting the battlefield after Rest in Peace kick things off here. There's going to be an opt-in response now for Severin. Lots of hate.
Yeah. I mean, I've played a ton of Magic tournaments where there's one key deck, right? There's a deck that just feels so much better than everything else, and then you zone in and try to build a control deck or a mid-range strategy solely to beat that deck. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think of a Grand Prix many moons ago, GP Flash and Legacy on Columbus, Ohio, where everybody knew Flash was the best thing going in. It ultimately did win the tournament, but there were a lot of people out there trying to beat that strategy. And some had solid finishes and were successful and made top 8 of that Grand Prix, and others, they didn't bring the right stuff to the table. So you can get it right, you can get it wrong, but at the end of the day, we know what the best thing is perceived to be. Now we're going to see if it actually unfolds that way.
We're going to see Prismari command here, and kind of interesting, a target emerged as well. The Prismari command does destroy artifacts. Witchclaw Talisman is going to get nabbed here on end step, as well as a treasure token, which is going to enable this Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, to hit the battlefield right now. And you see one of the many little 1-2 punches that decks like this have. You see the Memory Lapse in hand here as well.
And see, it's interesting, right? Because I think Luis is off to an absolutely fantastic start at this stage of things. Like his draw looks good. Like he played a Teferi ahead of schedule. He's been interacting every step of the way. And for those of you who haven't really watched the Tainted Pact deck here, it's kind of like, all right, so what? You're a bunch of one-ofs, and like, how do you go about winning the game? Well, Thoralf has a copy of Tainted Pact in hand, and that changes the equation in a very big way.
That's right. You can see that over on the left-hand side of his hand. Yeah, this deck is made entirely of one-ofs, including the lands. And that's all to get around the clause here on Tainted Pact. The only cards that there's multiples of are Tainted Pact itself, of which there's 2, and then Thassa's Oracle, of which there's also 2. And you can see he actually has one of those in his hand as well.
Yeah, and now we have a censor here, maybe for this Memory Lapse.
Luis doesn't look super happy about the prospect of getting nabbed here by a censor.
Yeah. So what's interesting to me is, okay, your Tainted Pact is resolved. So what are we naming any one particular card? Are we looking for one particular card? Or are we just going, I want to be down to 2 cards in my deck?
This is what Eduardo was talking about, by the way. So now Tainted Pact is resolving. So this process is going to get repeated as many times as Thoralf wants it to get repeated. He can just simply keep on exiling cards from the top of his library, and it'll keep saying, do you want to put this card in your hand? Because as we know, with one Tainted Pact in hand and one of his Thassa's Oracles in hand, they're all one-ofs left in the deck, so he can simply churn through the whole thing to try to set up Thassa's Oracle win, or, if there's another line of play that I'm unaware of, he can go for that instead.
This is silly. This is go, baby, go. Go, baby, go. It's like
he's basically doing this as quickly as he can, but this action is one spell resolving on the stack, and the rope is going to be going for that.
Are we going to get all the way home? I feel like we're not going to get all the way as far as we want to.
Oh, he's on 0 here. Timeouts is what I mean.
Yeah, now he's out of time, and I guess he picked up a copy of Underworld Breach. That might be a good thing.
Wow. That's incredible, and Thoralf does not look thrilled about that. Here's Expressive Iteration. Now for Luis Scott-Vargas, is this perhaps a window for him to get the job done? Weird. This is what this format is now?
I'm trying... Marshall, I'll be honest, I'm an outspoken individual. I'm trying to reserve judgment at this exact moment.
Yeah, fair enough. I won't put you on the spot. Here's the iteration resolving, though. A Brainstorm is going to be played during the same turn, and then he also gets another card in hand. He is churning through this library as well. Having a bunch of hate cards in the deck is just what the doctor ordered here for Luis Scott-Vargas, given the number of cards that he gets to actually see he can really get through it and find the stuff that he needs. And you see kind of the classic combo here as well of, in this case, not literally a fetch land, but close enough, a land that shuffles your library after putting back 2 cards that he doesn't want. That's why Brainstorm ends up being so powerful.
Yeah, completely busted Magic card. I mean, to see it in a format that's not Legacy is
Yeah.
It's a little earth-shaking for me. I've covered so many Legacy tournaments, you have too, so to see it show up in a different format and actually for some players to play online that have never played it before, it is a delight if you love to draw some cards and manipulate your deck. Now, I do want to turn the attention here back over to Severin here because drew Underworld Breach off of the Tainted Pact,
right,
which might matter, and then drew his other copy of Thassa's Oracle, which might matter. So we're going through this weird roundabout way of, okay, I have both copies of my win condition. Fabled Passage can take a card out of the deck. This is weird. Potentially. Yeah, this is weird stuff.
Also, he's got Underworld Breach and no graveyard at all
now.
Yeah,
because the Rest in Peace. Okay, so the Breach doesn't actually matter. I thought it was going to be more effective, which also means
just how do you end up playing that? You know what I mean? We're in a situation where he's been able to see a bunch of cards and he's like, all right, Underworld Breach, go. Nothing to do.
Nothing to do there.
Sacrifice it. Okay, cool. We're done here. It's just bizarre.
I'm really curious to know how many cards Thoralf has left in deck. I think I can safely say it's less than 10.
Okay.
I got a few glimpses as he was kind of clicking through on that Tainted Pact turn of it being around 14, 13 before getting roped out on that particular turn. So I'm curious. Now, what's also really interesting about this spot too, at least in my estimation, is he's not underneath any real pressure, I guess is what I would say. But, Luis is getting closer to an ultimate with Teferi and sculpting a pretty good hand. So the pressure isn't coming from just a general creature. It's coming from something else entirely.
Here comes, of all things, Lurrus of the Dream Den. Now, Luis is going to throw a 1/1 down just to protect his creature, his Planeswalker, but he also has Prismari Command. And look at that expressive iteration off the top of the library here.
Love that card.
It's so sick. One of them goes in your hand, and then this is really critical if you start playing this card, by the way. The next one actually goes into your library, and then the next one is the one that's exiled. So keep that in mind if you do decide to try out the card, that the second one you pick is the one you're not getting. And by the way, you mentioned it, said 8 loyalty on that Teferi.
Mm-hmm.
He's ready to go. If that thing can stay around a turn, we could see Brainstorm into Prismari Command into draw 2, discard 2 into another spell, and all of a sudden, Thoralf could be sitting there on 2 lands by the time the turn gets back over to him. And none of them will make blue.
Yeah, you're definitely gonna, if you're Luis, you're gonna take care of those blue mana sources because the other ones just don't matter.
He looks like he's in great shape here. With Memory Lapse in hand, it's going to be very difficult for Thoralf to really find a way out of this, I would assume.
Yeah, I guess this is one of those situations. Look like Drown the Lock is going to kill that token, so you can maybe...
This is desperation now for Severin. He's trying to get at the loyalty of Teferi, but Luis actually has a couple of ways that he can interact with this. He can just make another 1/1 and chump block, or he can use Prismari Command to do 2 damage to Lurrus. And even get something else for his troubles, like drawing a couple of cards and discarding them or make a treasure or whatever. Luis is interestingly in the tank on, can I just let this happen? Does it even matter? There's some pressure to think, well, I just want to go for the ultimate as quickly as I can, but he may not need to. He's digging around in the exile zone there of Severin and saying, well, do you actually have stuff that, what sequence of cards could you have in hand? Knowing about the Underworld Breach, by the way, that I could lose here. And it looks like he's decided, you know what? I can still leave up Memory Lapse. I can just afford to make the 1/1 and block.
Okay. Well, let's try this out.
Double Thassa's Oracle in hand here for Severin. Now, as far as his devotion goes, he would have 2 from the Oracle and 1 from the Omen, and that's that, right? That's all he would have here.
Yep. Yeah, this blue mana count is the thing that I'm looking at right now. He's got access to 4 lands to tap for blue mana, and then a Fabled Passage that, there might be a land in the deck for that to search up. I can't say that with a ton of confidence given what happened early in the game and how many cards were exiled. So
oh, that's a great point, Cedric. There probably isn't.
If I
Like
would be
he runs
operating
an
under the
island.
yeah, I wouldn't be operating under the assumption that like right now in the booth, because I can't see the deck, I'd be operating under the assumption that there isn't one. That's bad. That another memory lapse is that's a really good draw.
Right. I mean, because we're going to see Ultimate now, and if Thoralf puts anything on the stack, it's going to get lapsed, and then things are going to start going away. Now we're going to see. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Brainstorm and maybe even Prismari Command here, just to basically take away Thoralf's ability to do really anything. Okay, well, this does change things because I don't believe that Luis has a way to shuffle away those 2 lands on top.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then the Prismari Command just would basically get him through those and exile a thing.
No, this is the Teferi Emblem Buzzsaw.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, so he can Prismari Command and take out the other 2 like we described before. So, bye-bye lands. And what a weird game.
Yeah, so I putting the pieces together right now, watching this unfold, what I think this is it is less about Luis winning and Luis not losing. Because for how Thoralf has to win, he has to basically deck himself, and Luis just has to build up a wall of protection and then make it so that Thoralf can never win, as opposed to Luis having to deal 20 points of damage. I'm not saying that there won't be games in this style of matchup that Luis doesn't deal 20 points of damage, but I think it looks more like that more often than not.
Yeah, bizarre game. I mean, Thoralf ropes out in the middle of a tainted pact. Also, as far as interaction goes from Luis's side, I think he killed a Wishclaw Talisman.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it was just kind of him setting up his own stuff, basically trying to get Teferi to that ultimate. We do have to go back to that sequence, though. That ended up being the most important one as far as what Luis did that game, which was Prismari Command, blow up the Talisman, and make a treasure to get Teferi down a turn early, which means that he was able to ultimate a turn earlier and really close out the game here. Yeah. Okay.
So this is interesting to me. I'm going to dive into the nitty gritty of this a little bit. Pact is the most played deck in both the MPL and Rivals aspect of this term. Let's just call it the most played deck in Historic for this weekend, right?
By a lot. Mm-hmm.
And every player knew, presumably, but I'm just going to give all of these amazing Magic players the benefit of the doubt. They knew what they were signing up for as far as the roping is concerned. So in a way, Marshall, it feels like they may have 2 opponents, which is 1, the opponent across from them virtually, and 2, the old rope-a-dope.
I wonder, because he was just trying to get through his whole library, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't a card he was looking for. He already had the thing he needed. So the interesting thing then becomes, can you do that if you have 2 timeouts saved?
And that's what it feels like to me. Is because if there were 2, it was clear for takeoff. No real issue.
Okay.
And Eduardo had mentioned this right at the jump. He was just like, well, you can't do it with no timeouts. And again, it's as whatever, however you want to describe this, the reality of the situation is, we can't change it now. This is the situation we're in. And more importantly, this is the situation these players trying to qualify for Worlds are in. So they know what they signed up for coming into it.
I didn't know this is what I was signing up for.
It's unlike any match we've ever called.
Bizarre dynamic to be part of the story here. But at any rate, let's get into game number 2. Inquisition of Kozilek, another newcomer to the format, is going to take away, looks like a Brainstorm there from Luis. And how does this hand look for Thoralf? He's got Memory Lapse, Thought Erasure, Tainted Pact, Thassa's Oracle, and a Cling to Dust. And there's another blue card down there too. So that's a nice hand. The only thing it's missing, lands.
Yes.
He just has the 1 land.
Well, I peeled 1 off. Not bad. I guess, this hand that Thoralf kept, misses the land drop, looks a little suspect, stuff like that. But, you started off with a discard spell. You had Cling to Dust as a redraw. And a lot of your cards just cost no mana right now, and as far as no mana, I mean they're very cheap cards, a lot of 2 mana spells, and Luis's deck doesn't really put you underneath a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have no issue keeping this hand whatsoever if I'm Severin.
Boy, that land draw too was really nice. That really kind
Yeah.
of opened up things for him. It looks like he's going to go for Omen of the Sea to try to hit yet another land drop if he can. And he did put one on the top, so we have to assume that that's a land. And there it is. It's Temple of Malice.
That can
So
help
yeah,
find
this one's
another
really
land.
come around for him. And with his Thought Erasure in hand, with the Tainted Pact at the ready, he's kind of good to go.
It looks pretty good. Like he's got some proactive disruption with that Thought Erasure, as you did mention. He has both Tainted Pact and Thassa's Oracle in hand, missing the second blue source for the Thassa's Oracle. I will note that, but this looks like a totally fine hand. Luris could maybe work itself into the equation at some point, whatever. And we're looking at Luis's hand, and this game ain't playing like game one, Marsh.
No, he's got nothing going on here. Best he's going to be able to do this turn is cycle Shark Typhoon just to get another card. He's really out of gas now. Expressive Iteration is a card that does a great job of reloading, and he will be able to cast it next turn with some mana to spare. But, this was the turn that he cast Teferi last time, right? I mean, this is a much different game when that's not happening. And he's getting Thought Erasured here as well. And, what did he take away? Yeah, the Expressive Iteration, leaving Luis with just Shark Typhoon. And in fact, Luis is just going to leave it in his hand here, probably thinking this is my best avenue to start actually applying pressure to Thoralf's life total.
Well, I got to say, that was a really nice draw there for Luis. Picked up a copy of Memory Lapse. Thoralf kept a pathway on top. Yeah, this is this is just going for it right now. Jeez.
Wow. So Thassa's Oracle trigger on the stack. Tainted Pact goes on the stack. But Luis, with the cold rip last turn of that Memory Lapse, is going to really disappoint Thoralf here, although it may just be a delay tactic. That was the only card that Thoralf didn't know about, and he says, all right, you got there. I got to give you props for that. The thing is that Thoralf has the other Thassa's Oracle in his hand.
Yeah.
And normally this would be devastating, right? It would be effectively, burning the trigger from Thassa's Oracle, but he's got another.
And you got to wonder, too, how Luis is going to play the turn now, too, because there's a Tainted Pact coming. And I think Luis is smart enough to know that I need a little help here. My hand stinks, so going to cycle the Shark now. There's Teferi.
So he needs to hit another disruptive card here off of it that he can actually cast. Rest in peace.
That isn't it.
He can't cast that.
No.
So he's going to have to settle for just playing a land.
And I'd
back. But Thoralf has the same sequence that he did last turn at the ready.
Okay, so here's what's interesting. I was going to say I'd be shocked if Thoralf didn't go for it, but that isn't actually how I feel, because there are new cards and new information hanging out in Luis's hand. Earlier when he saw things, there's 3 new cards. Now, Thoralf might just say, I can't wait. The longer I wait, the worse it gets. Teferi's going to start drawing cards, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to let it rip and hope that it's good, which is probably what he has to do in this matchup. And I think that's what we're seeing right now, which is, screw it. I'm just going to go for it, because if I give Luis at least 2 more draw steps, I'm not going to win.
Luis is considering cycling a Raugrin Triome here, but he's just going to go ahead and scoop him up instead. And Thoralf Severin says, okay, back on the board, baby. It only took both attempts to get the job done. He got it. All right, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to have game 3 between Thoralf Severin and Luis Scott-Vargas. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back. Scott-Vargas versus Thoralf Severin. What is going to happen in game three? I don't dare predict after the way that the first two games went, but we'll see shortly. You can see the scramble that Luis is under, right? He has effective tools in his deck against this combo, but he also has a lot of things that aren't. They're either slow or their card selection, or they just don't really matter that much against what Thoralf's doing. So, for Luis, it's really just a matter of getting to that point where he can find the tools.
Yeah, I dig that. I think that what's interesting about this, and we've seen this over the course of Magic's history, a combo deck like this, it forces the opponent to have it. And if you ain't got it, it's over. And the other thing that's really tough about it, though, is it feels like in this particular instance, Luis has to have it multiple times. Like memory lapse, that's a little security blanket, but that ain't a hard counter. So you're going to have it multiple times, whatever it is, to stop Severin from going off, in my estimation.
Now, let's see. I'm really curious to see, because Thoralf's hands have been quite strong. We've seen him find his combo pieces and even find some disruption in there. And Luis's have varied. The opening hand here, I think, is going to be carrying an inordinate amount of weight on Luis's side, whether he has ways to interact or whether he has to kind of pray, because, sometimes you get those openers that have a brainstorm, as I say it, and an expressive iteration, and you just need to find the things. And it looks like that's exactly what's happening here.
Thoralf is a one-lander with just a Fabled Passage, a Censor to cycle. I know you can't get a good look at the hand now.
Ooh.
Looks like Luis is going to keep his. We saw Thoralf keep a one-lander last time.
Yeah, you gotta send back the one lander, especially if it's not a dual land, right? I mean, he is playing the Grixis version of the deck. He has needs for 3 different colors of mana, and it's just a lot to ask to get like an island and hope that it all works out. So he goes down to 6. He does have 2 of his 3 colors with the dual land that he has there. He's going to play that and pass the turn back, but we're going to need to see some lands off the top here for Severin to make a game of this. In the meantime, it looks like Luis is content with Brainstorm and a Shuffle. Ooh, there we go. Snow-covered island off the top here for Severin. So just what the doctor ordered. Now he has 2 mana, all 3 of his colors, and even both Tainted Pacts at the ready in hand here. Here's Brainstorm on end step for Scott-Vargas. He wants to get rid of a redundant copy of Teferi, and then it looks like a land as well. He will be shuffling those away right now with Fabled Passage as well, so those are long gone.
What we like to call a perfect brainstorm.
Oh, yeah.
From the coverage booth.
Brainstorm, yes. And here's Expressive Iteration, right when you want to cast it as well. This is turn 3. This will allow Luis to very likely hit a land drop off of it, which he does. He finds Dovin's Veto in hand, and there's the land that's going to hit the battlefield. And let's see if Thoralf has anything he wants to say. His gotta say it, his time bank has been reset. He's on 0 timeouts. So keep an eye on that.
We're just gonna keep, that's part of our gig this weekend now. I love it.
I love it. Watching. Somehow APM has become part of a combo deck.
That's right. How is your micro?
That's right. Moment of the Sea on the battlefield on end step here for Thoralf. And it looks like he's interested in a land, less interested in a Brainstorm. He even finds another land off the top of the library. So the land problem has solved itself. And he's even got a Thoughtseize here to take a look at what Luis is working with. And Luis has some interaction. He has a Memory Lapse and a Dovin's Veto, and even a Commit to Memory, which he could cast next turn. So Severin's going to have to work through some stuff here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at that Dovin's Veto, and I'm kind of digging it. Memory Lapse isn't the scariest thing in the world. Commit, it's expensive. Veto is so finite.
Right. And this is all assuming that Thoralf feels that this is very much a race to him comboing through whatever hate Luis happens to have. Because there was also Teferi, which, is the way that Luis won the first game. And he could just say, all right, fine, I'll take your big threat away. But he does end up taking the Dovin's Veto. And I agree with you, Cedric. That's the one that's really a pain. Maze Mind Tome, okay.
The one thing that surprised me a little bit, and I was thinking about this when it happened, didn't have the opportunity to articulate it. When Thoralf took his mulligan, he had to put a card back. He put he put censor back instead of eliminate. And I'm just curious about what eliminate's role is in his deck in this matchup. Because I'm just kind of thinking about how the games play, Marshall, and I'm like, I mean, maybe a really big shark, maybe.
Yeah, it was tough because I think it was like he didn't have blue mana, right? And he did have black and red. So I think the shortcut is just I might be able to cast this and I might not be able to do anything with the sensor, right?
Okay.
But these games don't go that quickly. And if you're going to play a game of Magic, it is going to involve you finding blue mana. And eliminate, I guess a shark, like you said, it really seems low impact in the matchup. So yeah, I think maybe, it's better to just assume that you're going to hit the blue because that's how this has to go. Mm-hmm. And that card would be more relevant. I think that there's some logic to that. All right, here we go. One time out on the bank, and Thoralf Severin is sifting through. Now, is he actually looking for the Oracle here? What happens now, I wonder? That's kind of the big question.
So that's the thing that's really interesting about this deck is like, you assume it's Oracle, but it doesn't have to be.
Right. It is this time. So he gets Thassa's Oracle into hand. Luis, by the way, jumped at the opportunity to fire off that commit. Thoralf was like, I'll just throw out a little Maze Mind Tome. And Luis is like, nope.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get this thing out of my hand and get some value out of it. So he did that. And now the Maze Mind Tome is gone forever, exiled.
I mean, you can't just go for this, right? Like you can't just
I don't think
Oracle Pact. I mean, I know you have 5.
Lapse.
I was gonna say, I know you have 5 cards in your hand. I don't care.
Yeah. See, the real issue is that he knows about the memory lapse, and that actually blanks that, right? Yeah. Because you don't get another Oracle trigger, right? We're used to thinking, I'll go for my combo. If it gets memory lapsed, I'll just go for it again next turn. But that's not the case here. You don't get the Oracle back into your hand. You can resolve Tainted Pact the next turn. And that might be good enough in some scenarios, but in some it might not. All right, we're going to see Valakut Awakening here to sift away a few cards here for Severin. And he'll get 2, and then the extra 1 he finds Cling to Dust, his own memory lapse, a land, and now there's that Underworld Breach again.
Okay. I'm loving it.
This is just absurd.
Yeah. I'm so here for this.
It's so crazy. And we're going to see a lot of this because, we talked about it in the metagame breakdown, but Thoralf is playing the most popular deck in Rivals by a lot. And this version isn't the most popular in MPL, but the Dimir version is. And they're both represented across the leagues as the most popular archetype. I think people really jumped on this, as a potentially broken deck for Historic.
Yeah.
It looks like land go here from Severin, and that means that we're going to see a 4/4 shark here from Scott-Vargas. That's a clock.
Yeah, that window was open, and draws a card, of course, because of cycling. So Luis, the hand is all right. I mean, I think he'd love to be able to get to Fairy Down and kind of get that rolling. Not sure if he feels like the window is open to do so, but he does at least have a clock on the battlefield now.
Yeah, I think that he's going to focus on trying to win with this shark. And it's going to get kind of interesting. So there's Cling to Dust to take out the memory that was waiting in the yard. But currently there isn't an answer for the shark. And Luis has access to quite a bit here between Prismari Command and Brainstorm plus a fetch. He can see a heck of a lot of cards out of his library and try to find whatever it is he needs at any given point. And that's on top of the memory lapse that he just kind of has stowed away, and he even has a Triumph he can cycle. So a lot of pressure, a lot of potential, I should say, here for Scott-Vargas.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. That's a good point. He's got a lot of good looks at it, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. And whatever it is beyond the memory lapse that he already has.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Luis Scott-Vargas is playing Gideon of the Trials as kind of a major speed bump for Thoralf. He hasn't seen that yet in the match. Ooh, there's Inquisition of Kozilek, though, for Thoralf. So that'll be nice. Although, gets kind of interesting with Brainstorm, doesn't it? You can hide cards. And we're going to see that here from Luis. One of the many reasons why this card is so ubiquitous in Legacy is for this reason. People play a lot of hand disruption type cards, and you can simply hide them. Wow. Triple memory lapse here?
Or you can go the other route and go, here's my hand. You can't pick a hole in all of it. I don't need to hide anything.
Seriously, triple memory lapse now for Scott-Vargas. He can just sort of leave it all there. So let's see what he does with this Brainstorm. Also curious to see if there are cards that he just has no interest in anymore. We talked about the possibility that he may just try to lean on this Shark to get the job done. And if that's the case, he may value the others. But here it's like, sure, have fun.
This just in, Brainstorm.
Wow. And Thoralf just nodded and said, he's just like, dude, are you serious?
Yeah, this is going to be a problem.
Triple memory lapse right now?
This is going to be a problem, yeah.
I mean, when you have a 4/4 Shark on the battlefield, that looks like almost lethal, right? Like, if you can resolve 3 of those in a row, it's 4/8/12. You only need to get 2 extra damage somewhere. And guess what? There's a Prismari command on top of the library.
That's a really good point, too.
Now, Thoralf does take one of them away, so it won't be quite that simple here for Scott-Vargas. But he does have a window that it seems that he can go. While Thoralf, he's been positioning himself to try to find the win, and he has gotten through quite a few cards. Oh, this is going to be sweet. He's going to go for Underworld Breach, which could get him back that Inquisition.
Yeah. Okay, so this is just basically a glorified way of flashing back a discard spell. Okay.
Yeah. This is cool. This is a really sweet play here for Severin, who says, okay, if I have to churn my way through all of these counters, I better start here. So Inquisition, and then I'm assuming do it again.
I'm working under the same assumption that you are. Yeah, this is also kind of interesting too. I'm not sure if you're taking a look at Luis in the bottom left hand corner. You know the man much better than I do, given limited resource and everything. He's pretty even keel guy. There's some pressure here.
Oh, he's dialed in.
Yeah, he's dialed in. He's obviously great, awesome, has a lot of fun. Nice blood crypt off the top here, but you can see he is. I mean, a lot of deep breaths right now. Like all of it.
People forget. It's so easy to watch him stream, to listen to him on podcasts and broadcasts and stuff, and to just think that he's all just fun and games because he makes it look so easy, right? But the truth is that these are very meaningful, tournaments, games, matches. He wants to win. Luis is one of the most competitive people I've ever met, and I know a lot of really competitive people, so that's saying a lot.
Interesting turn there.
He got burned there, though. The Mystical Dispute takes out the Teferi, and Luis, with no way to pay, doesn't want to do a memory lapse on this. He knows he needs to keep critical mass of those around.
Blue. Okay, so what? Oh my gosh.
I have no idea what happened with Thoralf on that last sequence, though.
Yeah, so I was really taken aback by that last sequence. It did not make a lot of sense to me because the Underworld Breach, recasting Cling to Dust, draw a card, draw the Blood Crypt, must not have enough cards in the graveyard to be able to escape another discard spot. I mean, you can see that what I'm doing right now, in addition to watching the game, is watching the player cams. And obviously these two players are not thrilled with something. Luis is, kind of locked in, but feels kind of nervous. Thoralf, I think, feels like he's made at least one mistake too, because he's been shaking his head like that.
Dude, look how close he is to winning. He's like a blue source away.
He's a blue source away.
Yeah, Oracle, put Pact on the stack. It gets memory lapse, re-memory lapse, and call it a game, and he didn't find it. He just could not find the third blue mana source. That's how close Thoralf was to winning right now, and that would have been the match. Oh, heartbreaking there for Severin.
So now my next question is, we're casting Granted. Obviously, we're looking at like a singleton sideboard, and it's resolving, so what are we thinking? Okay, we're thinking Tainted Pact.
He's just trying to go for they're basically just trying to out-resource each other. If I get 4 Tainted Pacts and you have 3 memory lapses, I'm going to resolve one at some point.
That's a huge Mystical Dispute.
Wow, that is massive.
Huge Mystical Dispute. Okay,
Luis
so
once again can breathe a little bit of relief here.
all right, so what I think what I think the plan is on Thoralf's side, well, I thought it was going to be, was play Oracle, hope it resolves, and then pact twice. Clearly, that's not it. So now we're just going to try to resolve a pact on the end step.
And what do? Leave yourself with one card and then just try to resolve Oracle?
We're gonna find out.
that must be it. I mean, that's a win, right? Like if you can get an Oracle on the battlefield, you've got 0 cards in your library. You theoretically could leave 2 on the end step here. Oh, he's got Pact of Negation.
All right, so that's a little more protection, and now he's drawn that other blue mana. Is this good enough? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't think 6 mana for Luis. I don't think so.
Luis has effectively 3 hard counters, and he can cast all of them.
Yep. So let's see. You play Oracle. You play a blue land untapped. You play Oracle. Then you try to resolve Pact. Lapse it. You lapse back. Pact your lapse. Lapse your Pact. Luis is going to win the counter war.
And this is, by the way, Thoralf going all in because he just put himself down to 4. You know, there was a window where he could try to set up for 1 turn later, but that wouldn't have worked either because of Prismari command. So here we go. Trigger on the stack. Tainted Pact. Memory Lapse now from Scott-Vargas. Boy, that Mystical Dispute is going to be huge for Luis because we're going to see a flurry of counter spells go back and forth. Memory Lapse your Memory Lapse. Luis deciding if he wants to let that resolve before firing off his other Memory Lapse, and he in fact does. In other words, he'd like to draw that one in case this doesn't go well. Yep. And here comes Memory Lapse number 2. But this is where Thoralf says, I got you, and fires off Pact of Negation, and it will not be enough because of Mystical Dispute.
There's a counter war.
Incredible stuff from these two. A strange match to watch unfold, but the 4/4 Shark is ready to go in the air. Luis had to win either way with the Prismari command for 2+ the Shark. So even if Thoralf didn't go for it that turn, that was going to be the game. But both players needed everything they had there, Cedric, just to make it that close. And it was Luis with that freaking card, that one last counter he got with that Mystical Dispute at the very end. It won him the match.
It's more about, as we're watching those games unfold, right? Like I kind of said in the middle of game 1, maybe between the games, it's more about not Luis actually winning. It's more about stopping Thoralf from winning because they have a finite number of ways to win. So you can play a game in a certain kind of way where you can just say, hey, I've taken out your finite numbers of ways of winning and you can't win anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Or you can see how the game played in game number 3, which is Luis actually putting on pressure with a Shark token and saying, okay, now you have to go for it. You can't sit around here and do all this cantripping and all this other nonsense and discard spells. You actually have to make a move. And then my counter magic is going to be even better that way. My memory lapses, my mystical disputes, all that stuff are great when it is forcing you to act. And then your mana is kind of constrained, all the other stuff. So I said kind of with our selection, you and I and all of us across the board picked Luis. The reason I felt Luis was going to win that matchup is because if this deck doesn't beat the Pact deck, then his deck is not good. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he would have picked the deck. I don't think he would have picked Jeskai Control if it didn't have a good Pact matchup, or at least he didn't feel comfortable there, because Luis does lean towards playing the broken strategy when he's able to play it. But this weekend he feels like he can probably beat it, and he's just demonstrated at least he's done it one time.
That's right. And it was close. I really want to highlight what you said, Cedric. The games that Luis won were the ones where he was able to get something that put pressure down and stuck on the battlefield, and then just scrape across by holding off, stopping Thoralf from being able to actually win the game with the combo. And we saw him win with 4/4 Shark in game 3, and in game 1 it was with Teferi's Ultimate. But without those, I really like Thoralf's side a lot, right? If you don't have pressure, Thoralf can just sit there and sift around and find cards and start to pick apart your hand, and then maybe have a big turn with Underworld Breach where it plays a couple of more hand disruption spells, and just leaves it where you felt like you had your shields up, and he's just completely stripped away your ability to interact with him. But there's a Shark or a Teferi ticking up. He doesn't have time to do all of the things he needs to do. And even though the games were close, it was Luis who came out on top.
Indeed. Really, really good match. I mean, a weird match, to be sure, but a good match nonetheless.
That's right. Why don't we take a short break here? And when we come back, we'll watch another match coming up in Historic. We'll be back right after this. And welcome back. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today on a Saturday. Historic. Wow. Okay. This is the new world of Historic. You know, if you're used to tuning into these and seeing like, well, who's playing John? Is Goblins back on top again? You know, that type of stuff. All those questions are gone. All gone. This is not even remotely in the league of what we're talking about. Mystical Archive has completely changed the game. And we're going to get to see more of it coming up in this next round set. We've got Gabriel Nassif versus Seth Manfield, and it's actually a similar matchup to what we just saw, but it's the Dimir Pact in the hands of Seth, and then Nassif is playing Jeskai Control as well. This is going to be game 3 that we come into as well. As you might imagine, this is a pretty grindy, long matchup, so we can't bring you the whole entire thing.
Yeah, game 3 sounds good. I'm sorry, I'm just... Look out, here comes Goblins. Like, I'm sorry. It's going to be a minute till we see that.
Yeah. No, I'll let you catch your breath. So let's take a look at Dimir Pact here. No red cards in sight. Maybe the mana's a little bit better here for Manfield. But the same idea that we just saw, you can see the deck is nearly entirely comprised of one-ofs. You see the 2 Thassa's Oracles over there, as well as the 2 Tainted Pacts. But everything else are just singletons, and this is a complete build-around combo deck around the card Tainted Pact. That's why you see this. That's also why we don't have enough room to show you all the lands where it says that there's 24 of them. They're all unique cards. They're all individual, differently named cards. Even the basics are one island, that type of thing. And that's because when you do go off with Tainted Pact, you need it to be able to go through your entire library effectively. And the only card that you may want to hit, a little later, is a second Thassa's Oracle if you've drawn one or something along those lines. So, there you go.
This deck, you talked about we're obviously talking about Tainted Pact, and I was going to say it's not quite Demonic Tutor, but in this deck it might actually be better.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Weird thing to think, because it searches for the card that you need and also doubles your win condition. Now, you can't play 4, given what this deck is trying to accomplish and what Tainted Pact does say, but it is just a little interesting kind of thought experiment of, it's not Demonic Tutor, but it might actually be better in the context of exactly what this deck wants to do.
It is. It just is, right? I mean, it's instant speed and it sets up your win, and it does the same thing that Demonic Tutor does in the sense of it gets you the card that you need. Yeah, that's a great comparison, and it really shines a light on how powerful Tainted Pact can be. I'm also curious to see how often they have a hard time finding it. I just there with only two of in the main, there probably are games where they're under some amount of pressure and they just don't see the Tainted Pact for long enough, and it might be tough for them to hang in. I'm curious to see if we see that play out this way. Let's take a look at Nassif's build of Jeskai Control. It should look quite familiar. It should be the same thing that Luis was playing, and it looks like it is.
This is I would say this is more Nassif's wheelhouse here. A little do nothing control deck, win at my leisure, I suppose, with a shark or activating Castle Ardenvale. You've mentioned, and I will mention here as well, getting of the trials. Didn't show up for Luis in the last match, but getting the trials, making an emblem, and having that getting on the battlefield, it immediately makes Seth or anyone else playing a Tainted Pact strategy have to change the way they go about doing business to stop the opponent because they have to kill that card and able to win the game themselves. Oh, and also getting is a clock in and of itself as well. So you don't see a lot of copies here from Nassif for Scott-Vargas, but it is a key card in this matchup if it shows up.
That's right. And I'm curious to see if it does. We didn't get a chance to see it at all with Luis versus Severin, but maybe it'll pop up here in game number 3. Also worth noting, Gabriel Nassif is near the top of the standings for his just near the top of the standings period, and really trying to kind of put a button on things here this weekend as far as moving forward goes. Going to really want to pick up a win here. We've had him on camera before, and it didn't go super well for him against Yuza. Let's see if he can right the ship here in Historic.
Just game 3, but these two, I mean, I could, but I think these guys, I feel like they played in the finals against each other in something. I'm just blanking now, but I could watch them play against each other forever.
Oh yeah. The players of this caliber tend to run into each other very late on Sundays.
Right. Yeah.
in our world. Looks like a mulligan here from Nassif. Going to put back a mountain. Also, we've been keeping an eye on the timer clock things for the players who are playing Dimir Pact, their rope clock. But as is often the case, it is worth noting Nassif, he's at 6.5 minutes here coming into game number 3. Now, as close as he can cut it, he almost never actually has clock issues. It's quite rare that he pays close attention to it, so he knows. Oh, Pack Rat on turn 2 from Seth. I love you, buddy. Patrick Ratterson on the battlefield. That's an alternate win condition right there.
Yeah, so you build your deck and you do all this planning around the combo, and then maybe you get Pack Ratted right out of the building. That's what could happen.
Wow. And it's funny because the window's closed. As long as Seth is okay with making a copy of Pack Rat here, the Prismari command is not going to do anything. Pack Rats swarm Planeswalkers and eventually just tear up your life total. And you can't imagine that Nassif kept in any of those sweepers that he had in the main. Like, you're not keeping those in against Pact.
No way. They don't. There's no reason to. And this could play. We might be going back to those Mono Black Devotion days there, partner, where it's just make a rat, make a rat, make a rat, make a rat. Good luck keeping up, because as you mentioned, we are almost certain that Nassif has sideboarded out all those sweepers, because why would he leave them in?
I'm calling it. I think that as long as Manfield is fine with just saying I make a rat every turn, I think he's just in a fantastic position here.
And by the way, while Seth is doing all of this pack ratting, as we're mentioning, he does have a copy of Thassa's Oracle in hand. And if he just rips off, well, I guess the Temple to see there's the battlefield tap. So I was going to say, if he just rips off Tainted Pact, the game is over. That's not technically true. But the point I am trying to make is that he still gets to play a game of Magic, build towards his combo game plan. And if he wants to pivot away from making rats, he can do that.
Wow. Excellent point, Cedric. Right now, Seth is putting massive pressure on Nassif from two completely different angles, and it's going to be so hard for Nassif to actually manage both of them. Like, if he can somehow find enough stuff to get the pack rats off the battlefield and not die to them, it's just going to be Seth looking at an opponent who's tapped out, who had to spend all their resources to get pack rat dead, and then he's just going to go Oracle kill you. Like, because he still gets to do his thing, as you mentioned. But now, if I'm Seth, I'm still just all in on pack rat, right? You're just like, make a copy, hit you for 2, and I'm just going to keep doing that and say, can you keep up?
I mean, it is interesting because he could go this rat strategy, or he could play Wishclaw Talisman, like activate, go get Tainted Pact, and then he has Pact plus, he can build towards a thing of Pact plus Oracle plus Pact Negation as the backup plan. But, he discarded the Wishclaw Talisman, so I'm not even going to talk about that anymore. I'm just going to talk about Rats Off to you.
Yeah, Pact Rat, if you will. This is amazing. Interestingly, Nassif did find a second copy of Prismari Command, which will let him stem the bleeding a little further. Until he drew that, he didn't have any way to interact with the pack rats. I still don't really see how he's going to find, again, assuming that Seth is fine with just dumping a card every turn to pack rat, how is Nassif going to find a way to kill 2 in 1 turn?
That's the problem.
That's tough. And meanwhile, his life total's dropping. So interestingly, Seth is going to play a land out of his hand. He has another one. And what that really means is that he can kind of really go all in here, because next turn he can make 2 rats.
Yeah, I'm curious. I was very curious about what Seth was going to discard, because you can make an argument for keeping the Pact because because that's counterspell, right? You can make an argument for discarding the land and keeping the Pact plus Thassa's Oracle, because then if you peel off Tainted Pact, you have the combo plus protection. So you can make an argument for a lot of different things. But Marshall, I think what we're going to see Seth do by discarding that Pact negation, you still give yourself the out of drawing Tainted Pact alongside Thassa's Oracle. But if you don't draw that card, and here's a Lightning Helix to kill one of these pack rats. But if you don't draw that card, you can just go land, rat, knife, 3/3/3s.
That's right. And, it really shows, I think, how strong Seth thinks this is, and how strong it seems to be, that he was willing to get rid of Pact of Negation, right? Because, as you said, that's a nice insurance plan for something that maybe you didn't anticipate or whatever. He's saying, I don't even need it. Like, no. I'd rather just get rid of it to the pack rat and just make them. And that really does just say, look, you are not getting through this, right? And in fact, we see him now discarding his entire hand of the 2/3/3 pack rats on the battlefield. New that makes the original one a 3/3, and it looks like we finally hit a turn, unless that Raugrin Triumph finds something where Nassif does not remove a rat, and he's cut it very close. He top decked the Prismari command to kill a rat, and then the next turn after that, he had to play his Narset into, and he definitely left up the mana for it, a Lightning Helix to kill another rat. I mean, he's been barely able to keep up with these as it's been, and yeah, GG.
I mean, Teferi, incredibly powerful Magic card. Memory Lapse, one of the best counter spells of all time. Blah, 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 blah. Rats off to ya. I'm doing this the rest of the game. Hello and good luck.
He can get in for 12 right now.
Yeah. He is. I'd be getting in for 12. He's better than me, but I'd be getting in for 12.
I would too. You know, 4/8/12, and it's a huge board. As we mentioned before, there's just no way that Nassif still has sweepers in his library. That would just be absurd to try to keep those in and try to fight the fight that he needs to with those around. And if that's the case, yeah, he's not going to kill 4/4/4s here. And it is Pack Rat going the distance, coming down on turn 2 on the play just ahead of Prismari Command and making it impossible for Nassif to maneuver here. He's going to plus his Teferi. Yeah, cool.
Dimir Rats.
Wow, Pact Rat gets the job done. Seth Manfield with turn 2 Pack Rat. He's going to pick up the win here.